Hello, and welcome to another interview for the Jesuit Schools Network's 50th anniversary celebration. I'm Julia Andretta. I'm the communications coordinator for the Jesuit Schools Network, and I'm joined today by Father Tom Roach, who has agreed to talk to me a little bit about his experience with the JSN, formerly the JSEA. So good morning, Tom. How are you doing today?
Good morning. Fine, thank you. Glad to be with you.
Thanks. Yeah, likewise. So I'd like to get started just at first with a little bit about yourself for the folks who are watching who might not know you.
Okay. Well, maybe I should start with where I am at this moment, and then I'll go back.
Kind of work your way back.
Okay. Right now, I am the associate chaplain at Loyola University, Maryland, and I've been here for 5 years. So then I should, on this anniversary, when we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of JSEA, I want to go back because I have a lot of experience with the JSEA, the Jesuit Schools Network, the JSN. I started off as a teacher, as many Jesuits in education did. I started off as a teacher and became an administrator. And as I say, once I got into administration, I seem to have stayed there. But I was a language and religion teacher. So I became familiar with the JSEA in the 70s, right after it was formed. I was principal at St. Joe's Prep in Philly from 75 to 79. So I remember going to participating in programs, going to events that the JSEA sponsored. Then I became the province delegate for education, which would be, in those days, I think that was called CAPE. There was a commission of assistants at some point became.
Yeah, I think I could be
so as an assistant to the provincial, I became more familiar. For a while, I was on the JSEA board.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Then I became. I went to Georgetown Prep at first as principal and then as president. Again, I had a lot of familiarity with the programs and the people. One of your press questions was about people. I can talk about that. So then, I don't know. I reached a certain age, and I said I was going on sabbatical, and I wanted to change. So I went off to Poland.
Oh wow!
To help the Jesuits. They were setting up a high school after the fall of communism. They had set it up, and things that Americans are good at, I suppose, like fundraising and structures and flow charts and all that business. So I was supposed to be there for 1 year, or for 2 years, excuse me. But I only stayed one because our Father General in Rome called me to Rome to be his assistant, his secretary for education, which in those days meant secondary and pre-secondary. So I did that for 8 years.
Wow.
So I get a different perspective. So I kind of left the JSEA and went across the seas, but I had learned a lot from the JSEA. I was in Rome for 8 years, which means that I was 9 years in Europe. I came back to the United States to be rector of the Jesuit community in Scranton.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on the board of trustees at both Scranton Prep and the University of Scranton. And then I asked to do pastoral work in one of the Jesuit college universities or high schools along the East Coast. So the provincial asked me to come back to my hometown, Baltimore. That's where I am.
Oh
okay.
Wow! So yeah, you came full circle.
Yeah.
Been everywhere, or what is that, Lord of the Rings? There and back again.
Yes.
Well, that's incredible. So you have a deep and rich history in Jesuit education for sure. Well, great. So with all of that to draw from, these should be really fascinating questions to dig into. But we'll start with the JSEA/JSN's mission. So the way that I frame this question is, without looking, without, you know, without looking it up, how would you describe the JSCA/JSN's mission, and in what ways would you say, in your experience, it has fulfilled that mission in the last 50 years?
Well, I have seen the mission of the JSCA as an organization, an association to help schools, and I mean that in the broad sense of, you know, the school leadership, the teachers, the whole school community, to help them carry out their mission. It's a service organization, and they provide services of all kinds. So that's what they've done through, well, publications, meetings, training of future administrators, all kinds of different topics. Everything has evolved, of course. I should say that. I can go back some years and say that, you know, things have evolved. When the JSCA came into existence, in the early years, there was a lot of emphasis on the identity of Jesuit schools, the mission of Jesuit schools, and that was a big help, because there were some questions in the 60s and 70s about the value of Jesuit schools. Were they still effective, or were we just doing the same thing the same way? What did it mean for us to adapt to the call of our general congregations to serve the faith and promote justice? So how could we do that? So we would go to meetings, and we would read, and we would talk, and then we would come back with ideas and try things. We would try things in our schools. Another big thing, I could see it evolving over time, was the involvement of lay teachers and administrators, priests and sisters from other religious orders, brothers, who were working in Jesuit schools alongside Jesuits. So the whole idea of collaboration, that grew much stronger. We became more aware of things. You know, we start off with Father General Rupe's famous call of 1973 to train our students to be men for others. Okay, so now, but it's not just men. So now we say men and women, and it's not just for, but it's with.
Yeah.
All that has evolved.
Yeah.
We've become more conscious of certain things. The poor. Okay, what are our schools? First of all, the presence of students who come from families of slender financial means. How is that going? What are we doing? What are we doing with our whole student body of different socioeconomic classes? What are we doing to help them to raise their consciousness of their own responsibilities towards society? Okay, another thing we've become much more aware of is race, which is obviously still a very timely topic. What about, because so many of our schools were in large urban areas where there were large populations, Black populations, Latino populations. And then, okay, also we became aware, as things evolved, more aware of students in our schools, in our secondary and pre-secondary schools, of different sexual identities. So that was a topic that came up. So things kept evolving. and we needed help. I say we, the people who were on the front lines, that's it. And the JSEA was there to help us.
Yeah.
A service association.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you did mention, you kind of helped me with a good segue into my next few questions, because you basically given a survey, like an overview of everything that the JSEA, JSN, what the JSN really at the end of the day exists to do is, as you said, support the schools in a variety of different ways on a variety of different pressing topics. And one of the ways that the JSEA and the JSN have done that is through the documentation, as you mentioned, the documents that they publish, booklets, and we think of what makes a Jesuit school Jesuit. We think of the profile of the graduate at graduation. We think of, especially this year, we think of 2020 Vision, which was a gathering and a document that came out of that gathering. So the next thing I'd like to ask you to talk about in a little bit more detail is a document that's come out of the JSEA and the JSN in the last 50 years that stands out to you now, and what about it makes it stand out?
Yeah. I think, well, I'd have to say that an important identity document about who we are, that was what makes a Jesuit school Jesuit. And I have to admit that, switching to my time in Rome, in 1986, we had the famous document for the whole society on the characteristics of Jesuit education. Now, obviously, those two are linked. But it seems to me that we always say in our schools that every decision we make, everything that we do, should flow from our mission, our Jesuit mission. So what is that? So, what makes a Jesuit school Jesuit? So I think was valuable and remains valuable. On a very practical level, I found that the profile of a graduate at graduation, that was very practical when we did a curriculum review with an eye towards curriculum change. That was very valuable. We used the document. We had something. There it is. So you say, we want to make some changes. Is our curriculum stale? But what do we do? Well, you contact JSEA and you get help. So they're two very practical things that I can think of off the top of my head.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think that is something that I agree, that I think is very valuable about JSEA and JSN publications, is that I think they strike that very unique balance between being very conceptual and very, like spiritual and thought-provoking, but also being very practical and documents that you can, actually use, like within the school, like you said, for curriculum or any number of very hands-on kinds of things. So I absolutely agree. I think that is a value added for sure. So kind of hand in hand with that, we also have the programming, which you also mentioned. And the programming and the training, I think the training was a reference to the seminars in Ignatian leadership. There's the colloquia, the symposia, and then the various, what were called cohort gatherings, we're now swapping to a more thematic Ignatian colleagues gathering model. But, all of these gatherings that bring people together in the service of Jesuit secondary and pre-secondary education. So the next thing I want to talk about is a gathering that you've been a part of in the last 50 years. And what about that stands out to you now?
Okay. If I may just, there's something that's on my mind right away.
Oh, absolutely.
Our Ignatian colleagues. you know, the training program, the training, you
Yeah.
know, we kept talking about lay leadership in our schools,
Hmm.
and we we said, well, how do we do that? You have to identify leadership, you identify leaders in your school, you recruit them in the
Hmm.
sense that you invite them and urge them to consider leadership. But then where do you go? Do you go out and get an MBA somewhere? You want to get a master's or doctorate in education? But what about the specifically Jesuit thing or
Hmm.
Ignatian thing? Well, I thought one of my favorite programs was the training program, because I know people who went through it.
Yeah, the seminars.
Yeah, the seminars, and I was part of them myself. Sometimes I was offering something to prospective leaders.
Hmm.
So just to say that. But to get back to the gatherings, uh, of course, I mean the last one I went to, I had to look it up. I went to the is it the colloquium?
Yes.
The colloquium in Cleveland,
Okay.
I think 2004. But I mean, I was in Rome at the time. I spoke. I'd offered some words of wisdom or encouragement. But uh, the big thing about those meetings is the solidarity, the camaraderie that you experience with your fellow educators in Ignatian schools. Just to meet the people and to share ideas. Yes, you listen to the talks, you break out into small groups, but I, and then one thing I really liked, as time went by, not everybody was from the United States.
Hmm.
I mean, you had Canada,
Yeah.
and because of the connection, oh, you had Puerto Rico, you had Belize,
Hmm.
and then and then we had some Irish and some Brits and some Australians. So
Yeah.
this was really good. So we got this international flavor. So I think that those gatherings, uh, not just gatherings of people with a specific responsibility, but for teachers, administrators, staff, everybody, I found those very energizing. Lots of energy there, which I could tap into and be affected by.
Yeah. No, that's the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I especially resonate with the energy of colloquia, because yeah, the cohort gatherings are very important. I think people really, and the themed gatherings are very important because I think people really like that solidarity with people who are working in similar areas. But I also think there's something just like really like almost like it's cheesy to use the word magical, but like of having all these people from such various um, positions and backgrounds. And as you said, they're only getting more global as they go on. We're inviting people from all over the world, um, and it's a great it's a great time of sharing um, and relationship building. So that resonates, and thank you for sharing that. Um,
Sure.
Colloquium 2004. uh, well, thank you. And then so I also want to ask, I think the way I kind of describe it is my questions start bigger and then we get more and more narrow as we go on because now I want to talk about a person. Some folks have talked about people because they couldn't settle on just the one person. But I would like to hear about a JSCA or JSN staff member, past or present, who had a positive impact on you and the way that you approach Jesuit education.
Yes. Well, I was thinking about the people that I've known. I've known the presidents since Ed McDermott,
Hmm. Yeah.
and back in the 70s, and I've known them in different ways. Um, um, and I've known Charlie Costello since I knew Charlie Costello since I was in high school
Mm-hmm.
myself, and Vinja Manuko. Uh, I used to work with him more in when I was in Rome. He used to come over a lot. There was a program of leadership, a leadership program. We used to work together on that, and then of course uh, Joe O'Connell and Ralph Metz. Um, both of those men were in Washington, and so at one point or another, each of them was on the board of trustees at Georgetown Prep. So I can remember developing uh, or the charge of the board of trustees to develop a long-range plan. So I said, okay, to Joe at one time, what do we do? Okay, they were very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say Ed McDermott was a great enthusiast. I mean, he was just full of energy. And I can remember one of my first events that I went to. I watched Ed in action. Father Charlie Costello was a leader in our own Maryland province in those days, and he was a friend of mine. And Ralph and Joe. So I'd say that each of them helped me in different ways. Some more inspirational,
Mm-hmm.
and some very practical.
Mm-hmm.
If that
Need a
makes
little
sense.
both.
Yeah, a little both. A little both. As I look back on the different people who held that office, there's the ones I think of.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing to, so I've talked to a lot of people at this point, but it's amazing to talk to someone who really has been there since the start, who has known all of these people. That to me is inspiring in and of itself. And then yeah, to, you know, I really appreciated, I appreciate the constant callback to energy and enthusiasm, and then practicality. Like I think that is a very important balance. Um, and I also, something I do keep hearing as well as you talk is this question of, um, it's a very simple question, but it's that, what do we do? Like, and I think that is like kind of the spirit of the JSA and the JSN of like, okay, we've identified X, Y, and Z. What do we do? What can we do? And just that kind of head-on approach of like, let's just take it right on and get right into it. That it's that enthusiasm and that practicality kind of married in that one question of like,
That reminds me
what do we
that
do?
from maybe from an international perspective, from my years in Rome and
Mm-hmm.
my year in Poland, uh, the I appreciated the treasure that the JSCA was,
Mm-hmm.
not only for the schools in the United States and Canada, but for many, many people, because we had this organization from 1970, and we had someone to turn to. We didn't have to turn to someone in another country. We didn't have to turn to Rome. We had people who could help us. And as I went around the different parts of the world, some of the countries or groups of countries do indeed have organizations, very helpful organizations. But I guess that's the whole idea. Whether it's the United States or it's the whole world, we try to help one another. And there are organizations and also the province delegates for education. They try to help individual schools.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point.
Well, thank you. So I only have one more specific question for you. And the way that I've described this is I am looking for like a moment frozen in time. So I'm thinking of a specific memory, a fond memory, if you can think of one that you associate with the JSCA or the JSN, that you'd like to share?
One particular.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is,
thinker.
because I don't know if there's a particular one. I have so many images because,
Mhm.
first of all, I've been away from the everyday workings of schools in a way since 2000, when I went to Poland.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's I would have to remember. I have images of uh, liturgies.
Mm.
We all
Mhm.
get together and pray
Mhm.
when we pray, and also just standing around, sitting down at a table with other people,
Yeah.
and meeting people you haven't seen for years,
Mhm.
and making, talking. Do you know so and so? Oh, you're from this country, so do you know so and so? That's what we do,
Mhm.
and just that. Um, I love the energy that's there, and I can just think of lots of masses, lots of gatherings, lots of social gatherings, uh, and meeting people, and meeting new people, and the young people who were coming
Mhm.
along as I got older, as I aged. I could see, oh, this is the new crowd, and that's a great thing to see. So that this continues. This being uh, what I think is the gift of Jesuit schools to the church and to the world.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I couldn't be more specific.
Oh no, that's okay. I try to, I always come in with that, but I feel like something that I'm discovering is really it is about just the um I guess it's been a learning experience for me asking that question, because more often than not it is more of just like a feeling than a specific moment. It is more of like something that has come up a lot has been that sense of community, those moments of just the social in between moments of the various gatherings and conferences. Yeah, the liturgies as well. It's like something that I'm learning as I'm talking to people more about this is it really is there. It's more of a that feeling and that sense of community and that sense of being in something together and working towards something together. And again, as you mentioned, the energy, the enthusiasm, um, and I think that in and of itself is maybe more powerful than any single like anecdote or image. Is just when I think of JSEA, when I think of JSN, this is what I think of. I think of a passionate community of people. I think of making new connections and making new friends. Um, so no, I think that's a perfect answer. So thank you again.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So that is all I
Oh, well,
had, but I have.
I'm
Oh,
glad to talk to you. I'm glad to help, because obviously I have great esteem for the JSA, the JSN, and
mhm.
I'm very grateful. There's something I have to look back and say, this gives me an opportunity to say, wow, I really have great reason to be grateful. So I say, uh, JSN, happy 50th anniversary. God bless you all. God bless us all.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, but unless there was anything else that you wanted to make sure you said,
Um,
anything you wanted to add, but I think that was what you did just now. But
yeah, I think that's about it.
that's
Yeah,
a wrap.
to sum it up.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much again for agreeing to speak with me.
You're,
It's been a
you're welcome.
pleasure.
You're welcome.
Um, and yeah, happy 50th anniversary, JSN. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Same to you.